I'm Shane Nyland, and my co-host is Blake Musser. And these stories you're about to hear are from Weapons Company, 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines, 1st Marine Division, about the events surrounding and directly from the mouths of the people who were in Ramadi, 2004. Fantastic. Let's introduce everybody to who you are.
Duke Wells is first lieutenant, the XO Weapons Company, 2-4.
Nice. And I don't know a ton about you, which is interesting. I don't feel like as the XO, we had as much contact with you as we did with, say, the CO or anybody else. But I know a few things about you. I know you went to Annapolis, and I knew you were from Texas. That was all the things I could remember about you personally that I could remember from back in 2004.
Yeah, that's the case. And I was probably about the most senior lieutenant on the deployment from them. We got there even well before the Oki before. There for before 9/11 even.
Yeah.
Some of y'all were, but through that, and then I was the weapons platoon commander at Fox Company for the Oki deployment, doing the boats and all that jazz, and then on their turnaround, of course, was XO at weapons there.
Did you come over then immediately after the Oki deployment, or was that when did that transition that you came over to Weapons Company?
I mean, we heard Dobbs talking about the timeline there. I think it was somewhere late summer, after we got back, and then they did the reorganization, and then we got filled in with new officers and stuff like that. And that was usually the kind of way it went if you were that senior. Some of the other lieutenants, Lieutenant Appert, I think the previous 81s guy, he was my roommate at Annapolis and stuff. But he was 81s, but he B-billed it out, and a couple other guys. And I think me and Lieutenant Kaler stayed. He was Echo for a while for that shit happen. But that's the kind of time, they did the reorganization there. And it talked about it earlier. I think it's correct. There's a lot of it made about how young the battalion was and all the boots. And I think that's definitely the truth. But of course, weapons was just for the nature of it. We were a lot more senior, had a lot more NCOs, and a lot more. I mean, that's always how weapons is organized. Usually, being a little more senior in the battalion. But I did think that made the feel for us a little bit different. I think the line companies had being so raw. But we can talk about it a little later. But we were also, because of that, we were also tasked with a lot more responsibility, I think, for the battalion, because it was kind of expected on us, because we did have such, little bit senior Marines, I guess you could say, in that time.
Well, since you already kind of dipped into it, I'm curious about that. Was that the view that Weapons Company would shoulder a little bit of different responsibilities because of seniority or because of our capabilities? You would know better than us. That's actually why I'm asking.
Frankly, the whole mobile assault company was amazing. That was actually Colonel Kennedy's baby. He'd done some kind of super paper on that thesis at the War College or something. And before taking command, he was on General Mattis' staff at the 1st Marine Division. And my understanding is that basically Mattis gave him that command with the understanding that he was going to operate mobile assault company, different than had been done before. So like going in, and so the colonel knew that, Sergeant Major knew that, ops guy, Major Harrell, everybody, and it was just immediately like, hey, look, this is what we're going to do. And then basically, in my opinion, it was like the glue that held everything together. Nothing else was going to work unless we got, for the whole battalion, the way they wanted to do it tactically, strategically, especially in that city. So, I mean, we definitely felt it, and I think everybody else did. Maybe that how important it was, but just the fact that all the platoons, everybody got that done was, especially in hindsight, you see it. That's a major accomplishment in and of itself. Like you don't. Very rarely do you ask any combat units to do anything like that kind of giant reorganization and retasking, ETOing in any kind of environment, much less, in the thick of the kind of combat we see. So just everybody being able to do that is amazing, and it's been talked about on here, and I'm sure everybody knows down to the vehicle commanders and the gunners how amazing that was, in my opinion, to be able to make that change, how different the tactics are, especially over Sledgehammer, Rainmaker, right?
Right.
I mean, it could have been a whole different thing. It could have been a whole FTC. We never left the wire. That's all the whole training and stuff was geared. And what we have, like 2 months of actually doing that stuff before.
Maybe.
I would even argue less, just because we weren't even the training prior to going over, as far as I know, and any of the ones that I participated in, we weren't doing anything out of vehicles. It wasn't that we were running around and dismounting and stuff. I mean, there was a little bit, but not enough to be able to say like, oh no, we got training before we went. It was still very foot patrol-y.
Yeah. Yeah, we certainly didn't incorporate the vehicles into the training at March Air Force Base in any functional capacity the way we used them when we got to Ramadi. Yeah, it was very different.
I remember the only thing I remember on that, as far as it was fun. Maybe a couple of ranges at the end. It was like we did it like fucking LA drive-bys. Remember, we just like practice running up and like getting the fuck out and shoot. And then that was when we were like, hey, you know what? These flimsy ass doors are kind of getting our way to getting out of the kicking ass. So let's just take those off. Like, we're just gonna ride around with no doors so we can get out faster. And of course that, from being the XO and doing the company training and doing all that stuff in the training aspect of it, it was completely night and day. Like that, whenever that was, December or something, like the floodgates just opened and they just started dumping us ammunition rounds, training rounds. That was when Gun and Rocky doing all this stuff in the back range there.
Yep.
All more the toe shoots, heavy machine gun shoots.
Yeah, I remember basically.
You were all on before. There was maybe like 1% of that kind of training ammunition or something before that, and then all of a sudden they're like, yeah, shoot, I'm ready to be one. Take it as many as one. So
that's good.
I do think that gave us a little bit at the tail end to help it, but yeah, that's about it. But so that only makes it more amazing that on the fly, basically operating tactically as a mobile assault platoons, and having every one of them, all 5 of them, that was a really important piece, because that just really allowed us to maintain total coverage and get the rest for people. Mm-hmm. That schedule, and having every platoon be able to hold their weight and more made it so much smoother and more lethal for everybody. It was not a weak link in the whole thing. So you get 5 maneuver elements, which allowed us to do a lot more things, obviously.
No, the way that you guys had it structured, it definitely. I don't remember which person brought it up. It was maybe Fox or I don't remember who it was, but brought up that I never even thought about that. It was unique how we had our rotation of the five slots of day taskable, et cetera, et cetera. And thinking back on it, although we were at an extreme tempo, I don't remember ever being mind-numbingly exhausted. I mean, days, sure, but from a tempo standpoint, I don't remember personally being like, I just, I think about those line company guys and the grind that they just looked exhausted all the time.
Yeah.
And so it just crazy. Yeah. But I first sergeant Gunny and all the platoon sergeants on down, I think one did a great job of trying to hold the line on that. Like, hey, these guys are on nights, and obviously people got jerked around, they got pulled out, we'll do whatever.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, we tried to really guard against that, because we saw, you go out to combat outposts and you see those walking dead just drudging around. Like, this can't be combat effective. Now, of course, it helps to ride instead of walk.
That's very true.
There's a big difference for sure.
And you got a bunch of heavy machine guns. I think it takes the weight off a lot. But I just being able to get that done in and of itself, I think made a big difference. Not just for the platoons, the company, but for the whole battalion, because of that was we had such crucial tasking pretty much all the time.
When I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it allowed then the line companies, because we were able to be so dependable that if they got into the shit, that we were able to roll out and provide that pressure relief that they were then able to, although that they were pushing hard, they knew that they had, more or less the cavalry to come and bail them out if they need to. And so they didn't need to be as concerned.
Absolutely. There is no way that the line companies could have operated like they did if they didn't know. And not even that we would just come out and help them, right? That they knew every time that we would hit the gates going 100 miles an hour and come out and hit somebody in the mouth and save your ass every time. And we did every time.
Yeah.
And I obviously by the end, I think everybody on down the line over there kind of recognized that. I know that the company commanders and platoon commanders, everybody else definitely did, and that's what allowed them to operate like they did. Now we're a little biased here in weapons, so I'm gonna give you that every time.
We won't break our arm too much patting ourselves on the back, but it's
show me some evidence otherwise. And then again, going back, that was the colonel and the sergeant major and everybody made it very clear early on that that's what it was going to be like, and we could see it by being in the battalion COC and our COC studying like, hey, what's going on here? Like, Jesus, they got these guys flung the fuck out everywhere.
Yep.
And like they're going to be that's their only hope if they get in a bind is us.
Right.
And it's the knowledge and the capabilities to be able to do that too. You were so good to know. We were the only unit that knew the whole city,
right,
that knew the streets, that knew the environment in each different location. And how it goes. I mean, think if you asked like golf company to go try to run up to Sophia somehow, and there's a totally foreign territory to them. So we were the only ones that encompassing knew the whole AO, and everybody outside of Ramadi knew that too. What weapons company is famous? Anybody that came to Ramadi, whether it's Army brass, Marine brass, Delta Force guys, and all that, they all knew exactly to ask for weapons. We want a weapons escort.
Huh.
Because they knew that we had our shit together and we knew the city the best. And we started out all gung ho about it, like, fuck yeah, we can do it. But then you're like, wait a minute, if we just keep doing this, then they're going to give us every damn thing that comes down the line. But then it got to the point where if you give it up, you're like, well, let headquarters do that escort. But you knew you're going to have to go out there and save their ass anyway. So you might as well just do it and get it done right the first time. But no, really, people coming from all over, they already come with that reputation, knowing like, hey, don't try to stick us with some headquarters escort or even another company. They're like, we want weapons, because
it's funny. It's funny you say that, because that's how it felt at the time, but I don't think I remember hearing that, which is, I don't know. That's kind of cool. That's good to hear, actually. Again, you would have heard it more than I would, because you'd be at higher level meetings than I was. But yeah, that's cool, man.
That was definitely the case. Everybody needs to know that.
Nice.
So if you don't mind, I would like to dial back and talk a little bit about our ramping up process. So we get, if I remember the story correctly, we get more or less word where we're going at the Marine Corps birthday. And then, so prior to that, we knew that we were going to get deployed, question mark where we were going to go. And then, I would be curious to hear your side of it, because being a lowly corporal, all we got was scuttlebutt. That was half true. But then
right.
The last part of that is, once we knew that we were going to Ramadi, what kind of information flow did you get of saying, hey, this is how you might want to train yourselves up, other than what we've already discussed about how we organized ourselves, but more specifically, like tactically, strategically?
Yeah, it wasn't. I wish I could pull back some big giant curtain, but there wasn't that much information. Like I remember, like when we made this, when we got back from Oki, and everyone was making a decision whether they're going to the B billets or do you want to try to take a weapons company job, wherever. That the colonel did tell me for sure, us, like, hey, listen, I can't tell you details, but like we're going to Iraq. He wanted me to know, like, like. That's what we're doing. Like, I think still officially it was Oki at that point, and we're like, well, I'm not staying here and doing another fucking Oki shit. I probably wouldn't survive that. But so I remember that then. But then after that, there was no specific. There was like nothing. They like they didn't tell you where, because that was the biggest like land movement. Like when we flew over there, a lot of talk of that, all those shitty flights and all that. That was one of the biggest like movements since like World War II or something. That whole
really?
army changeover. So they really didn't have any of that mapped out. And I think they knew the first Marine Division was going to be in the West, in the Al Anbar. The first information at all I remember getting was maybe after Christmas, and it was a brief like saying we're going to Habaniyah. I remember putting up a map, and it was going to be Habaniyah, Sasso Ops, blah blah blah.
I remember that as well.
And
actually,
the Ramadi shit didn't. If I remember, it was Kuwait. That's when they were like, "Oh, you know what? Actually, all that shit about Habaniyah, don't worry about it. We're switching it to Ramadi," because we didn't know. There was no studying or war gaming up anything or knowing anything about the city of Ramadi before. I want to say until we were on the plane gone, and in Kuwait. If not, it was right before. But I don't even remember any talk of Ramadi before we even hit the country. And then of course I just remember immediately be struck about looking at the map and like, Jesus, how dense things are. Because Habaniyah was not that big of a place. It was like in between there, It's
a tiny resort town. Yeah, it's small.
And all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, actually, no, you're gonna be over here." And like, "Oh, which part we got?" You're like, "No, you got the whole city." We're like, okay. And then the National Guard or whoever that wasn't worth shit.
It was a National Guard, but they had
apparently,
as we've found out, I didn't fully appreciate this, but for the most part had already pulled out.
Yep.
And then it was being covered by.
I didn't remember that exactly either until I heard it on here, but that makes more sense now why those guys had no interest in. But they didn't have. They were just like hunkered down. Like, this is what we do. We're just here to stall.
Well, they're a skeleton crew. Yeah, they couldn't afford to get into a fight.
Right. And so there's pretty much there's no. That was all really last minute and definitely no planning for that AO. I think all that got shuffled together right at the last minute. There's no telling.
That's very interesting. I guess I didn't really fully appreciate that would have been the largest movement. Also, that makes sense now that you've actually stated it out loud. But that's a fascinating factoid there.
Yeah, I hope that explains why we're on that damn C-141. I couldn't believe that. Are they really doing this?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the few stories that I would tell people before this type of environment where I'm actually telling more of the stories of Ramadi. But I would tell the story that trying to get to my war zone, I probably had more opportunities to die than when I was actually in Ramadi. That's the damn plane tried to crash like 5 times. But
it was, and all I remember on that is pretty much the same thing that's been told on here. I guess I don't know who was with the colonel and most of the company, but same thing. New Jersey, snow, running around, calling cadence, and then Germany for like a week, whatever it was.
Way too long.
And then Kuwait there, and that one just like. Gunny Meraki comes and says, "Hey, I don't think you want to know about any of this shit, sir, but I think the Army's got a bunch of good shit." And I'm like, "Just go do it, man. Go do whatever you gotta do." And he just fucking turned it loose. It was amazing.
He let the Lance criminals out of their cages.
Oh yeah.
I may or may not have been a part of some of those operations.
Yeah, there you go.
Allegedly.
That's good.
Fabulous job. And And then that was kind of weird. That was the first time I've ever been around the Army at all. I think most of us too. I remember just being on there like we were like only Marines in the whole base, surrounded by that many guys.
Mm-hmm.
And then the only real thing I remember for that is we went to chow one day in Kuwait. They had that big huge chow hall, all Army, and it was me, Captain Weiler, or maybe some platoon sergeants, and there was this Marine like warrant officer sitting at the end of this table all by himself, like with his head down, and I remember feeling like, okay, we're kind of like surrounded by the Army here, and they're just kind of, giving us the stink eye and stuff, and we're like, hey man, Double Dog, come over here, sit with us. you know, the digicamis, and he kind of like sheepishly gets up. He's looking down. He didn't want to look anybody in the face, but he comes over and he sits down, and we're like, you know, trying to chat him up because I'd never seen him in the battalion before. Like, you don't see warrant officers that much. You're like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
And then finally we're like, he's like, I'm a reservist, and they called me up for my job in civilian world last week, and I'm already here. And we were like, man, like, you must be, you know, like a high speed guy if they jerk you off out of the civilian world last week and you're already here in Kuwait. And you're like, what do you do, man? And he looks up and he goes, I'm a mortician. And the First Marine Division sent me here to set up this giant morgue in the Green Zone in Baghdad. And we're like, Jesus Christ, dude, you're the Grim Reaper, you know? And that's why he didn't want to look anybody in the face, because he didn't want to recognize anybody later, you know? And
Jesus.
we were like, I get it why you're sitting by yourself, dude. Like, the First Marine Division thinks it's like a big morgue. He's like, yeah, it's gonna be huge. I'm like, oh Jesus.
That's awesome. That's got to feel real good right before you cross the LOD.
So they made plans. Grim Reaper.
Well, I think that.
Though, I guess.
Well, and I think that's, but I think that is telling. And I don't remember who, somebody said it, of that there must have been an anticipation of us just getting absolutely chewed up. I mean, not that we didn't, but that it was going to be much, much worse than what we were able to fight back against.
I think so, or they're just planning. But I mean, but it was such in contrast to the field that we got before that, right? Because we thought we were going to Habaniyah, and it was all this handing out soccer balls and all this stuff that everybody remembers. But it wasn't. I don't remember it being like a giant, because there wasn't a giant insurgency or thing going on then. There wasn't these casualties. So I don't. That was what was such a contrast on that deal. Like, okay, well, you know, somebody's at least thinking that there's a good chance it's going to go the other way.
Yeah. That's a good one. So now I don't remember, how did you transitioned up to Ramadi in the convoy, correct?
Yeah.
Do you remember who you were with?
The two big ones, I can't remember. It was with the company. Yeah. And like I say, I don't know what, the two big convoys, I want to say. I feel like the first one got stopped and we ended up catching up with them. And then there's been talk about these other people. The only way that I know of, and all this is by recollection, the only way I know of anybody else from the battalion or the company for sure got up there without driving in that convoy was like the advance party flew up. Yeah. I don't remember there being a bunch of other people above and beyond the advance party flying at all. I thought we all took the convoy, but
I know that there was 81s that came up in a like plane. I think it was Helos, but yeah, nevertheless, that they were brought up after the convoy, in a different, like, in a different phase, but it wasn't super long afterwards. But it makes sense partially because we wouldn't have had the room on this, like our vehicles. I mean, I look like Sanford and Sons with how full the back of my high back was, and so there wouldn't have been any room for anybody. But with 81s having the bodies that we did, like, where would they have gone?
Yeah, I think that was it.
So,
yeah. That was March 6th-ish when I think the first convoy was Golf Company and Weapons Company mixed, and then some of Headquarters Element, and we all kind of went in that big giant train.
Yeah.
I know when we got there, did you get any real handoff from the unit that we relieved, or was it just like, this is it, here's a map, and then they walked out?
Pretty much is what I remember. I mean, it'd be like I'm thinking we're like, put the flak jacket on, like, let's go look at it. They're like, no. They just sat there, and the COC would be like, you go out that way, that's this, and there's a mosque there, and then you turn around and come back. Like, okay.
It's just absolutely.
I didn't talk to you much directly, but I talked to JD quite a lot, and he had the same impression. He came away shaking his head every time. He was like, I don't know anything. Here's a map. Let's go. I mean, we'll drive around and figure things out. That was it.
A lot of it had to do with the fact that we already knew going in we were going to do like Marine shit, right? Like we were going to do patrols. and like the Army did none of that, and they
Mhm.
had done none of that. So they didn't have any of that information to try to give you. All the information you would try to get, like, hey, turn over the AO, like, can you make it down this street? Can you go around this corner? All that shit. And they're like, I don't know. But we knew going in that, hey, we're going to do that probably. So that's what the information we were looking for. So we were just kind of dumbstruck that they didn't have any of that information.
So that piece of information makes me ask. So if our directive was to organize the way that we did, especially for weapons company, and then, as you said, do our Marine shit of how we own the city, from my understanding, we were under the brigade, not necessarily listening to Blue Diamond. But was that a directive that the brigade was asking us to do, or was Colonel Kennedy given kind of the ominous dominance of like, here's your AO, don't let stuff pop off, go with God, and kind of to get to decide how we wanted to do it? As best you can remember.
Exactly. We were definitely under exact command of Big Red One,
right?
But being a Marine, the only Marine battalion attached to that Army unit, there's no way that the General Mattis and all that was all in the mix.
Sure.
With it, because that was a Marine battalion with the Army, and of course, Colonel Kennedy had a good relationship with him, so they're But basically, my understanding was that that's your AO. You're supposed to make it work. What's your plan? Execute it. And so I think early on that was mostly the tasking, right? Most of the patrols and stuff was not so much for like fine IEDs. It was like, hey, we need to like map out this whole place and get every platoon knowing, like, comfortable on like how to get around the city, knowing where to go so they wouldn't get jammed up, knowing how they could get to wherever they needed to get to if called to that place. So that was that tempo of running patrols and ops both day and night was really initially just trying to like gather, and each one of the platoons did a fabulous job of that, having to work through themselves, like, hey, because you only had, you're by yourself, you had your navigating, you were doing all that stuff, and you had your map. There's no one to tell you about all that. That's what I know that more than anybody.
Like, Gunny Cook had me as his lead. We were first truck and I was his driver, and 90% of that, as he said to me, he's like, you don't get lost. I need you to be, you have a pretty good sense of direction. You look at the map and this is where we're going to try and go. He was then on the map, but we didn't know where anything was. And
crucial.
Yeah, I think our first week we were knights, if I remember correctly. And I remember our first missions with the CO and you both. We're going out at night, and we would just drive. We called them sightseeing missions. We would literally go out and then just get out of the trucks and start walking around and like looking at stuff, and which looking back is a little bit crazy. Yeah, but it worked. We knew what everything looked like. We knew what was normal and abnormal, which was the goal.
Yeah. No, which I think served us in the whole battalion very well later. Yeah, each platoon would being that efficient on it.
Do you remember? Do any of the early missions stick out to you? Or do you any of the early jumping in with the different platoons? Anything stick out to you? I won't make you say if you had a favorite or not, but
that early was just ridiculous. Remember with the curfews and stuff? And there'd be cows in the road. You just run around and just like run. Some guy come hauling ass through, and you run them off the road, and they're just drunk driving with bottles of booze everywhere, and like, like, get out of here! Like, what are we even doing out here?
Yep. More than once, a guy told me he was going out for cigarettes, and I was like, "Well, I understand that. Yeah, go ahead."
But the rest of it was mostly, I just remember the ghost, with those early days of the IEDs and all that. And before you could just, all right, screw it, we're just going to shoot this thing and get the hell out of here. Everybody remembers all those hours of sitting around waiting for EOD to do the stuff, and all the protocols they had in those real early stages of it. And I just remember being so frustrated because there was never, it was ghosts. There's never anybody to shoot. It just kept getting blown up.
Right.
Everybody does all their shit, gets out, dismounts, ready to do it, and there's just no targets. There's nothing. Just day after day. That's what made it. And then later on, that's the other thing. I think everybody, I'm so proud how everybody did. Talked about some, not enough. But all those raids, whatever it ended up being, 44, 45.
It was a lot.
My citation said the citation that I got for my award said that I went on 68 raids.
There you go.
So, but that was, but I was also
because you hopped back and forth on the breach teams and stuff.
Yeah, I got pulled over to like some of the golf company ones too. So,
but think how many ops that is, and to generally speaking, successful on every single one of them, despite all the obstacles. And it's not like it had the same. We talked about before. You got the rotating platoons. It's not like you had the same units doing the same things every time over and over again. They were just like set aside and babied and like, you're the raid force and you get to do that. It was just whoever was like night taskable, night QRF. And of course,
the genius of that though is that then we were sharing information back and forth. It wasn't just this is how Sledgehammer does it. We were, there was information flowing back and forth of like, we're going to do it a little bit differently.
Right. Which was crucial, I thought.
100%.
So probably that, and then of course Morris, and then the big raid on the Farhan brothers that night of the 5th.
Yep.
And then kicking off in the morning. And the Farhan guys, we felt good about that. That was the first one I ever remember. You talk about information flowing down. That was the first raid I ever remember where the suits came with pictures of those dudes that you could actually like. It was actually a picture of them, not some crazy super grainy. Like it was a pretty decent shot of like, these are definitely the guys. This is what they look like. And I believed it. And they were like, these guys are the ones that are planning this big shit that's fixing to go down. That's what they told us. And we're like, well, hell yeah, let's do that. And I remember that they were like, we don't have time to spin up. We think these guys are in one of these two houses, and we don't have time right now to spin up a Delta team or SEALs or whoever they're going to do it. Can we go get them? I'm like, yeah, we can go get them. We're doing it anyway.
Yeah.
And that was a great deal. Who else was out with that?
It was
Whiskey 1. It was Crawford and 2.
Map 1, as far as I know, was the only one. Wasn't 2.
Who did the cordon? Must have been somebody else.
I have no idea. Yeah, I assume it was one of the 81's platoons, but it was not, because Map 3 was still in house and Rainmaker was still in house, I think, and 2 didn't go out. I think it might have been just Map 1 by themselves, or maybe they were supplemented with a line unit, but it wasn't.
Maybe. Not maybe. We hit 2 houses, and the one we blew off the wrong door of some lady's house. It was totally the wrong house. And then they went to the next door.
Yeah.
And then Crawford and his guys hit the house across the street, which was the other target, and there was like 12 women in there. That's it.
Okay, so I think now that you're telling the story a little bit more, I think this is one of the ones that I got pulled out for, and I was over
forward some lady's door.
Yeah, I remember. Great. No, I was. Yeah, it was. I think it was. I don't know for sure, but I think it was like, I feel like it was golf. And I remember because I was part of the element, and they got up there, and I was watching them put the C4 on there, and they put it in they put it on the center of it, and so it just blasted it in, and the door didn't come off, and so then they had to blast, and it was that was a big mess. Anyways,
it turned out it was the wrong house altogether. It was supposed to be the next one.
That's right. Yeah, I think it was Golf Company, if I remember correctly, because that was one where I got pulled out.
Might have been. And I don't know why. They Crawford went to the next house, and they kicked the door in on that and cleared that, and that's where the Farhan brothers and all the dudes were. There was some kind of tunnel they dug underneath between the 2 houses and left all the women in the first one and tried to escape over there. But that was the only one you have like a solid picture. Like, this is the guys. I don't remember why. I think they weren't even ready yet. I don't remember why they didn't have us take them straight to the Shark Tank or Junction City over there, because we ended up taking them back to our hooch at Hurricane Point that night for a couple of hours for some reason.
I don't remember, but I know starting around the Battle of Ramadi, we had those Marines from the Het teams that had set up in like the Motor T hooch, and they were like doing like a first interview with a lot of the people that we had brought in. It was weird, and then it never happened
hooch
again.
On the end.
Yeah, and it never happened again. That was it. They did it the one time, and they never did it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that.
I was with them. I ended up taking them back to eventually Junction City that morning. The farm, the detainees. 8:30 or something, and I had just gotten back and just laid down whenever the radio started going off with all the ambushes that morning, and everybody took off out the door on the 6th.
Now I know you weren't with us with Map 2. Where did you end up on the 6th, or were you running our COC?
I was in the COC until the evening. I went out late in the day on the 6th, basically after everything had kind of calmed down, and linked up with the Colonel Captain Weiler and some folks at the main house where they had all the shit. Those guys on the roof doing all that.
Okay.
But everything had died down by the time I got out in the city that night.
That'd have been Map 2 and Rainmaker out there in the north of the Sophia district. Okay, that makes sense.
Right.
So what I remember of you that around that day, and I can't remember if it was the 6th or the 7th, I remember you had this leather chest holster like a cowboy, and I was super jealous. That's what I remember. Where did you get that holster? Because nobody else had one of those.
I bought it. I bought it at some flea market, like in California somewhere.
That's awesome.
Later got stolen out of my truck in Long Beach about 2 years after. I was so pissed.
That's bullshit.
That's about the only thing I'd like to have. The thing was fun.
Yeah.
But stolen. No, it's always the good shit that gets stolen,
Yeah.
So not much on the 6th, and then I was out all day mostly with Map 3 on.
I did know that.
The 7th.
Anything stand out for you from the 7th? Just curious from your perspective, especially because you were probably thinking more of like, where is everybody?
We were up all night in the COC, and then that's when it came in like late in the night, early in the morning that directive to do the PsyOps mission in the morning. So they wanted 2 Army trucks that had those speakers on it, and they had this message like, we are your friends, we're not here to fight you, whatever it was. And pamphlets they want.
Yeah, that was crazy.
I remember being over with the CO with the 3 all that morning arguing about that, because it came down. We're like, definitely going to get. I knew exactly who they were going to task with it. And I knew exactly who it was going to be. It was going to be 3rd platoon, because they were on that morning. It's like definitely going to be us that gets it. And I remember calling over there to like the Army, trying to get understanding, like, what the hell are you talking about? Like a PsyOps truck, and like, what do you want to do? And that's when they're like, oh, yeah, we got these pamphlets, and then we got these big speakers. Like, what do you have, guns? They're like, no, we don't have any guns, but we got these big speakers. And I'm like, well, how's that working? They're like, oh, we got to drive like at least under 10 miles an hour to get the message out. And I was like, man. And Map 3 had been all that fighting the day before. They were in probably the thickest of it, arguably.
Yep.
With Condi shot and everybody, like, they knew more than anybody what the city was about. And obviously speed was such a thing. Like that's the last thing any of us wanted to do, was just bebop down so, and it turned out we argued with it, and they told, shut the fuck up, say aye, Lieutenant. It turned out that mission had come directly from like General Mattis. So it's like, we're doing it no matter what. So I didn't have the heart to tell them just to go do it. So I was like, well, let's go. And to take a little heat off from higher, and like gunny country was so good at fighting that platoon, but you shouldn't have to deal with it. It had so much brass like breathing down the neck of that op, wanting updates every 2 seconds and how's it going.
Sure.
They were all all the way from Blue Diamond. We're sitting back in a little COC seeing how it went for the opening of the day.
I I have not talked to anybody from Map 3 about that mission. Every platoon has its own character. I love Map 3. They're a little gangster as far as just in general. That's a tough group of dudes. I'm trying to imagine them the day prior laying down so much hate and then going to the marketplace and handing out flyers and trying to say, sorry, we actually mean we love you. That's
This is a ridiculous ask.
Yeah.
And we got through the market, and of course you get the stairs, but the hate glares from that day was above and beyond anything, as you can imagine. And they're ripping those flyers up.
Yeah.
And we got to the end around Michigan, and I was like, dude, I called back, like, we can't go back through there, let's go around. Which Route Nova, which is a great safe way to go back, right? but at the end of that, before we made the turn, here come a big Haji funeral procession, carrying a casket in the streets. All these dudes. So we stopped, had a big Mexican stare down with that, let them pass through. And we're like, man, obviously they're not just gonna get over this right now. And then we wheeled back around Route Nova, and then somewhere past Gypsum, somewhere on the I don't know 90 Easting or something. That's when the ambush hit off with the. I talked to Kelly and everybody about the guys in the palm trees, up in the things, kicked off with the RPG that missed. Thank God, that. The fact that those opening salvos, the RPGs, largely we escaped those in multiple
it's insane.
Insane. Think how much of a difference that would have made on most of those engagements if it would have been able to really swack the first vehicle
and or the duds or the training rounds too. I mean, just incredibly lucky.
Yep.
Yeah. But Map 3 was gangster. I mean, those guys. Those guys in the trees, I hear Kelly talking about it. Can you imagine? They probably thought it was such a good idea whenever they were doing the turntable drop. Like, oh, we got him.
Yeah.
The guy's like, I'm going to nail that first vehicle with an RPG, and then you're going to be up there just. And then for it to turn around. But it did feel weird because the rounds were coming straight down. Yeah. It hit. We all jumped out. We're hammering, and get rounds coming straight down at you. And we're like, how is that possible? Look up, and then. Kelly got that. I don't know if he had to get the Martine all the way off the cradle or not to get it that high, but close.
Yeah, probably.
And he started popping them. There was 3 of them up there that I remember. And they all fell 30 feet. And one of them reached for his rifle, and we took care of him. And then me and Gunny Crutcher got the other 2 and drug them across the road. We had POWs or EPWs, whatever you call them.
Yeah.
But then the Map 3 just started hammering with the heavy guns, and then the back half of the column, Sergeant Williams, all those guys just. No, of course that's when Cummins got hit in the way back, but they just started firing, moving across down from Route Nova, with all the gun trucks laying down suppressive fire. It was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. I mean. They just took it all the way through there to the houses and just destroyed those guys, and then of course Cummins caught one on the way back.
Fortunately, didn't slow him down too much. He wasn't gone very long. A week or 2.
Caught his cheese. Yeah. I think the most frustrating about that thing, as I remember, is how. Out in Ramadi, where the city was so big, so all that shit happened. Cummins gets, he's bleeding bad, and we take off to try to evac him, and you get a mile down the road, and now all of a sudden you're just in a Thursday morning traffic jam in the city. These people had no idea that there was these giant engagements going on, and they're just commuting, and we got a bleeding Marine in the back, so we were a little pissed, to start knocking cars off the road, to get through it. But that's just always struck me as kind of surreal that, and that kind of, it's not like the whole, that day, that morning, everything wasn't the just empty hellscape that it would be later in the day. It was just, you get to a different part of the city and they're just oblivious to what's going on. I guess it'd be like in New York where you're you get in a big gunfight in Queens and then get down to Manhattan. Everybody's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
That's a great analogy.
But we got him back. And then And we went out with them as a QRF to get golf company late in the day. The golf company had been out fighting for hours.
Yep.
And they were low on ammunition, and they were holed up at the south end of Easy Street at that power station.
Mm-hmm.
Had like the fence around it.
Yep.
And then there was a squad from Fox. Lieutenant Denman was out on patrol out there and been stuck out there and was separated from them 4 or 5 blocks up Easy Street towards Michigan. That golf company had been unable to like break out of there and fight. So I remember we just came storming in there and started and linked up with Captain Bronzy and them, and they've been out there a long time, and they were happy to see us when that Mark 19s everything started going. That was a cool thing. The Captain Bronzy was our us lieutenants, most of our like machine gun instructor at the basic school in Quantico. So he was
really?
like all moto, jumping up on tables, doing all the machine gun classes and all that shit. So to come in there, and he was like, "Oh," we pulled it because like, "Where are you taking fire from?" He's like, "We're surrounded." So we're like, "We're coming in from the south, just don't shoot us." And we rolled in, and then of course he was surrounded. And then when all the boys started hammering with the 50s and Mark 19s, he just like, "That's the greatest sound I've ever heard." He was so happy. He was so happy. But they broke out to the south. We moved up north and had Lieutenant Denman popped yellow smoke, and we found him on the corner and linked up, and they were pretty bad off with I jumped out. I was like, who are you taking fire from? He's like, it's a sniper taking headshots, and he's already bleeding out of his right eye. And then about that time, snap, here comes sniper rounds into the wall. It's whoever's on the 50 in the truck right up there saw the muzzle blast and put like a can into him, and we never heard from that guy again. And then we just had to shoot our way block to block all the way back to combat outpost. That was when it looked like a Doom movie or something. You know, everybody was clearly off the streets by then, and it was just running around everywhere. On the 7th, back to combat outposts, and then you started to take in all the other stuff. I think Rainmaker was out there. Lieutenant Dobbs' truck was out there. That was the day they got shot up. Mm-hmm. Go look at that thing, and I don't know how they survived that at all. And then I don't remember how we got back or when we got back to Hurricane Point late that night. But
it seemed like the 7th was a longer like duration day, at least as far as I can remember, because it was all day. It was whatever it was, 12, 14 hours. It seemed like all day. And the 6th was like intense, but not all day, where the 7th was definitely all day. And then, if I remember correctly, we did Operation County Fair the next day. Does that sound right? On the 8th?
Yep. I don't remember that being much of nothing.
There was nothing. That's what I remember. I remember finding a couple field hospitals and then nothing else. That was all. That was it.
I think they were pretty broken by then. You know, yep. The steam was out, and then of course the 10th. That was, by my recollection, that was the battalion. It was 14 supposed to be simultaneous raids.
Yep.
And of course, weapons. We had 3 or 4 or 5 of them. I was with whoever we were with, and we had tons of guys in the house we were in, and it was the one where we had that fish hook lake was behind it. We started taking fire from there. We turned around, and then one of the Humvees got stuck in the mud, blew the tire.
Oh, that sounds like map 3. If I was guessing,
across that swampy field in the middle of Sophia there.
Yeah, that sounds like map 3 because the story I remember it was Silton that got the vehicle stuck somewhere. I think
so.
Yeah.
And then we finally pulled that out. Put a bunch of detainees in. I don't know how many detainees can you fit in a broken Humvee?
Yeah.
One more at least. But yeah, but that was, I think everybody was kind of fighting on their own little pockets there. Where did we set up the 81s? Do you remember? We fired a couple of 81. We fired a loom at dawn from a couple of troops.
So
maybe some HE.
So they had we had a small, like 2 or 3 mortar set up at Hurricane Point, like across from the COC, kind of in where those trees
Yeah,
were.
yeah.
But then they had set up like 1 or 2 out at combat outposts,
That's
and
right.
and
Yeah, that's
then
right. Fired
and
them
so
from
they
there.
they you guys decided to fire it off from there. I don't know exactly what happened, but that's when we almost had a we were providing an outer cordon, and those were danger close because
Danger close.
they spun the data up wrong. And I have a very specific memory of curling up into a very small ball behind a berm, being like, "God damn it! I'm the FTC chief. I'm going to get killed by friendly mortar fire."
Yeah, that was been a bummer, isn't it? Oh,
Oh well.
oh well. Uh,
I'm still bullshit that I never got to fire any rounds in anger, but that's all right. Mortar rounds, that is, but
mortar rounds, yeah, yeah.
got to do other things in anger. But
So I remember catching a few intel briefs and stuff where I was invited along for whatever reason with Major Harrell, and I think you were there, all post Battle of Ramadi, and getting some after actions reports and sort of casualty reports and all that kind of stuff. Anything stand out to you that you can remember after those meetings of anything that was like actually interesting? Because I don't remember anything being surprising. I just remember the numbers being thrown back and forth of nobody really knew how many people we were fighting and how many were killed. It was like people were just making up estimates at the time.
Yeah, like after action for the battle there.
Yeah,
After
just
that.
curious if anything stood out that was
Yeah,
unique.
same thing. But I think all of us out there could kind of see, like, how could you possibly count or
Agreed.
figure,
Yeah.
so I was always skeptical of anybody throwing any numbers. Like, how did you, like, you could ask anybody from, PFCs to all the vehicle commanders to the squad leaders to the platoon, like, who could honestly say it was out
Right.
there? Like, how could you actually put a number or some details on that? So I don't remember anything definitive. I remember getting intel that was pretty much confirming that there had been a large influx of fighters that had flooded into the city right previous to that. Some of it was trying to escape the cordon in Fallujah, in addition to also, like, hey, they're going to try to make a push to recapture Ramadi. So there was other people specifically coming to fight there for that jihad, and I feel like that was obviously correct. I think there was definitely more bad guys there that time than there was 2 weeks before or a week before or something. And then the fact that obviously, there's a bunch of ops we've been on, or you talked about that, because of the Islamic rules or customs or whatever, they were grabbing all these bodies off the streets, and of course it wasn't just the fighters that would do that,
Right.
It was just anybody in the neighborhood would grab and hide the bodies and all that kind of stuff. So obviously, I think that made it even more difficult to ascertain what kind of numbers you're up against, or what kind of what the actual some like ratios were.
I remember a couple of times that almost being creepy. You drop the person and then you look a different direction and you look back and they're gone. And all just left
gone.
Goddamn and bloody shoe.
Yeah. Minutes later, there'd be a shoe there. Yeah. Always shoes. There was nothing else. Yeah.
Yeah. Like magical. Like how is that possible?
Yeah.
Even if it wanted to,
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's all I can. I don't remember getting much definitive information at all in any of those briefs. I remember being pretty skeptical of any kind of hard numbers that anybody would really put on anything.
Right. So I remember there being a palpable shift sort of after April, and it came probably June, maybe July, where the people that we were getting into gunfights with were a different caliber. It was a more lethal version of attack. The technology seemed to be increased on the IEDs, and the guns that were used against us were a little bit more accurate. There's a little less of the spray and pray and run away. It seemed like it shifted from an organic movement, or at least local fighters, to maybe something more organized, like Al Qaeda or whatever. I know we heard lots and lots of different things.
Those goddamn Chechens.
Anything, anything stand out to you?
I agree with that assessment. I mean, I think it definitely did change then. I think it kind of woke them up and angered them after that, so that they really did put more distinct, military operations going on in it, as evidenced by the things you talked about. Being better at it and more lethal at it and more professional at it. I think for sure. Yeah, I think they kind of got embarrassed by that. I think, and fired up that they lost so many guys and stuff. So I think it rallied another batch of more professional jihadists, and probably everybody offered up a lot more weapons for their disposal. Sure. After that goes down, but they definitely got more sophisticated, I think, and more lethal in those months after that.
I have a hard time remembering one. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just saying. I think we did too. I think some people touched on it, but that's another part of that. Addition to like just the whole Mac transition, but the heavy weapons swap that we did after April.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And map 123, not such a big fan. Sledgehammer, Rainmaker probably so.
Yeah, we were appreciative.
But that was a big decision, and it was hard for everybody. I knew that was gonna be controversial. I mean, every platoon commander, platoon sergeant, and squad, they everybody voiced their opinion on that. I knew how it was going to be taking heavy machine guns from a Marine platoon, how that was going to make them feel. But that's one of the things that struck me as amazing. That I remember we all had them sit down. We did platoon commanders for sure. I think platoon sergeants, I don't know who else, and just at the table in the COC is like, hey, this is what we've kind of learned from this big April fighting, that you got Sledgehammer and Rainmaker out there with like pea shooters, saws, and like seriously undergunned, and we saw how big of a difference those heavy weapons made in those days fighting, undeniably. Mm-hmm. And then it's not like we were trying to ship them off to headquarters company or something. We're like, no, it's going to right there. It's going to Musser and Staff Sergeant Cook and Ray, and for everybody to swallow it. I realized it didn't go as big. For everyone to swallow that and then like go teach Marines from the other battalion how to use, or from the other platoons how to use those, was amazing to me. In the heart of that, I mean, I was like, I was just dreading, like, I gotta go tell this kid that like he used to have a toe or a Mark 19, and now he's got a saw, and you're gonna have to give that to a whole different platoon. So that always struck me as just unbelievable. Love of the team and the guys, and being able to overcome that. And I think it did work out better. I mean, I think they're more. I think it made all the platoons more effective. Having Sledgehammer and then Rainmaker had those other assets for the rest of the deployment.
I was very aware of it coming over and being very appreciative. So
20 years later, I appreciate it. At the time, I was angry.
Like, fuck no. I should be angry.
Yeah.
Trust me, all the leadership from the platoons pitched a fucking fit. As they should. I didn't expect anything less than that. Right. But in the end, we're like, hey, looking across at the guys next to them in the same company, like, okay, we gotta do something.
So that makes me think. I don't know how rare or unique, or if this ever, like how often this even happens, but the fact that we had two of our platoons have staff NCOs as commanders. What was that a big deal? Was that a big decision? What can you tell? Because I was very aware of it, with Gunny Cook and him being absolutely amazing. I thought he did a phenomenal job at it.
Absolutely.
But but that's got to be kind of rare. Other than maybe losing the commander in, due to death in the middle of a fight, than having them assume that role. But we went in there with the decision. What kind of thought process, what kind of discussions were made, and was there any ripple effects outside of the battalion?
I don't know about ripple effects. There definitely was some. I think it definitely was rare in any circumstance, but much less if you're going to transition to the Mac concept as well.
Yeah.
And what I remember, the only reason we were able to do that is because I think we just had faith in how good those guys were. Very capable. There's never a question about it. Staff Sergeant Cook and Crutcher were like, these guys can do it.
Mm-hmm.
There never was a doubt in our mind. They can do it. And we did, normally in any kind of TO, that wouldn't be the case as far as like just straight staffing wise. But that's a testament to them making it work. And I think if it was other people, probably would not been that comfortable doing it that way. I would say the same thing about if it was another lieutenant that was like maybe not up to speed or something, because we needed every maneuver unit to be able to hold their own and be ferocious and work independently. That's part of what made the whole thing work. And having them be as great as they were, just prove the plan right. I thought, here we go. But I don't know if that. I'm sure that other battalions have had to deal with that, just because there's not enough. Again, that's not the Marine Corps TO or staffing levels, whatever it is,
right?
For that kind of operation. So you're never going to have enough officers to cover those. I don't think, unless maybe there's some instance in the future that they did. It would have been a great billet. Like every lieutenant wants to be a weapons company platoon commander. It's like the best job in the battalion, at a lieutenant level. So, but we just never had a doubt that those guys were just hell on wheels leading their platoon. So let's do it.
That's also funny. I didn't know it was a coveted position. I always enjoyed my platoon commanders, but I didn't know it was something that would be like the best job in the battalion. That's cool, actually.
I think so.
Nice. I mean, yeah, you might be a little biased, but that's okay. Yeah.
Well, I guess it also kind of begs the question, like how siloed did you guys feel as far as, okay, we're Ramadi, we're whooping it on here, and like getting some feedback with how things were going in, Moselle and Fallujah and Tit and stuff like that. Did you?
Yeah, at my level, no, we weren't getting shit. That was the box.
Okay.
We had all we could handle in the city, and then it was basically like, listen, I never remember it being even a question of like, are we gonna do something else? Are they gonna bring another battalion in? Or like, that was just like not gonna happen. So we're like, we got our AO, and whatever else happens, happens. And of course, like the Fallujah thing was obviously it's been talked about a lot, but that was a completely different thing over there,
Right.
It just was like different. Yeah.
Just massively. They weren't even in the city. They were just in these giant bases around it forever, waiting to get the call and then getting pulled back and all that until they finally later did it. So that was really just a stalemate over there. And I don't really remember any discussions on. And then of course the whole south side of the river and then being attached to the army and stuff. We didn't have a good communication with them. Didn't get any information. I think if that would have been a Marine division we were with, I think there would have been a lot more cross communication, because probably could have known some guys over there and talked about it and stuff. But
sure.
I remember our comms.
Do you remember communicating with the Army about anything?
I never remember getting any information at all from an Army unit. And I mean, Blake was just saying it. I remember even just trying to talk to him on the radio was impossible. Like they just didn't answer. That was it. Yeah.
Well, if I remember correctly, the crypto was different.
Which was?
If I remember correctly, I think they had a different crypto load too, and so like we couldn't communicate, like it wasn't possible to reach out to.
I think there's a lot of that too. But yeah, even at my level, there was no cross communication, but with them at all that I recall. So that left a big giant like information intel black hole, in my opinion. And we're like, all right, we'll just stay in our box and worry about whatever comes into our little playground.
If you like what you've heard, this is a multi-part episode. Make sure you listen to the rest of the story.